Yeah, the brothers and sisters all over the world, greetings to you. This is Ghana Unplugged back to you again. Don't forget to subscribe and like our YouTube channel. So we continuing our lessons from where we left last week. Last week we spoke about a topic where we discussed about the fact that people have always looked at Africans as blacks as people who never had a history, who never had a culture until they came into contact with the Europeans, which we learned was entirely not true because we learned that we've always had our way of life, we've always had our culture, we've always had our history. So today we are going to look at one of the kingdoms that existed here in Africa before we got into contact with the Europeans. And so we're talking about the kingdom of the Axumites or the Axum Kingdom. This kingdom existed in the areas currently occupied by Somalia, Saudi Arabia, South Sudan, Yemen, Eritrea, Djibouti, and then Ethiopia. So the capital of this kingdom was called Axum. Axum, which is currently in Ethiopia around the Tigray region. This kingdom we're talking about was so big, it was so vast, looking at the landmass, the area it occupied. The first king of this kingdom was called Zoskil. Zoskil was a great man who was able to put his people together. In the kingdom, their main source of livelihood was farming, subsistence farming. They grew crops ranging from apple, pineapple, avocado, mango, cassava, name them, vegetables, and a whole lot, which they exported some, they sent some to then Persian kingdom, then Roman kingdom, and then Chinese kingdom to assist them in their livelihood because their soil wasn't fertile and it couldn't support any plant growth. So Africans generally, by virtue of the fact that we got love, decided to support them in that aspect. So trade was also one of the main emphasis that we could talk about when we talk of the Axumite kingdom. They traded with the people of the Chinese Empire, the Roman Empire, and then the Persian Empire. And in this kingdom, they had their own currency. They had gold coins, silver coin that they were using in this kingdom. And so it was a great kingdom. And this should testify and prove to you that we've always had our own way of life. You know, like I said last week, people have argued that we never had any culture and our history it's nowhere to be found, which is entirely not true because in this kingdom they had their own writings. They had their own way of writing, which was called Giz or Ethiopic. And so this writing, if you want to prove it, if you go to Axum currently, it's still in use. People over there still uses this writing. They still use this language. And so Africa is a great continent. It's always been great and it will always be great. This kingdom started way back from the first century to the third century into the sixth, eighth century. Eventually, after showing all the care and the love, generosity towards the Romans, the Greeks, the Persians, they ended up invading around the 8th century. But eventually, I mean, who Jah has blessed, who the ancestors has blessed, who God have blessed, nobody can curse. So eventually, the kingdom rebounds in the 13th century. And as until now, the kingdom is still in existence. This kingdom had beautiful monuments, beautiful symbols. They had obelisks, which were made of stones and woods, which is currently all over the place. But the most funny thing and the craziest thing is that when Mussolini of Ethiopia, the fascists, when they invaded Ethiopia, they ended up taking out some of the monuments from there. They took some of the obelisks, which is currently in Italy. This is crazy, and this should tell you that Europeans have always jealous of our way of life. They've always been jealous of our culture. That's how come Mussolini will end up stealing monuments from Ethiopia and taking it to Italy. This is not new. I mean, so many of our monuments, I mean, in research has proven have been taken away from the continent to all over the place. Talk of Britain, talk of Rome, all over the world. And so somebody probably elsewhere will be asking, how did such a great kingdom come to a halt? How did it collapse? Yes, the answer to this question is that um, after Zeuskill has reigned for some years, some other kings came to take over and also ruled. But fortunately or unfortunately, Izana, one of the youngest children of Zeuskill, happens to, I mean, inherit the throne. But in the life of Izana, you know, throughout the trade with the Persians, the Romans, the Chinese. And let me tell you, as at that time, Ethiopia kingdom was the kingdom of Axum. The kingdom of Axumite was the greatest all over the world, comparing it to the Persians, to the Romans, and to the Chinese. And they will testify to it. History will testify to that. So, the Axumites were producing a whole lot of goods to help the Romans, to help the Greeks, to help the Persians, to help the Chinese to also live, to survive, because they had nothing. They had nothing. So we will gather these goods, transport them through ships to Roman, to Persians, to Chinese, for them to also have a source of livelihood. So in the course of trading, these Romans sat down and figured out a way to break the kingdom down. So then they sent people on a missionary, and one of them was Frumentius. This Frumentius guy came to Axum, and then learned the people's way of life, learned their culture, learned their writings, and so he remained there working on his missionary, his trade work. And eventually he ended up teaching Izana, who was a kid by that time. So after Izana has grown up and taken the throne, Frumentius used his influence as Izana's teacher to influence him to accept Roman's way of life and forgo the traditional Axum way of life. And let me tell you, Axum always had their own orthodox religious practice. It was traditional in nature, very, very traditional. Some of their gods were Astor, the god of Venus. Some were Habas, Heba, and a whole lot. God of, creation and all of that. That they always called on whenever the need arose. This kingdom had their own military might. They had their own policing might. It was so much uniform. And so Frumentius came in learning everything and ended up teaching Izana, influencing him to accept the Romans' way of life and forgo their traditional way of life. But mind you, their traditional way of life is what made them so powerful. So in Frumentius telling Izana to forgo his traditional way of life, that means ideally he wanted the kingdom to collapse, which eventually came to pass. So Izana gave in to Frumentius' idea and forgone all the traditional practices. He put a halt to the building of obelisks, and this angered the people. Some of the people, there was division in the kingdom. We all know of divide and conquer as a military way of breaking down a kingdom. And so when they were able to influence Izana to accept the traditional way of life, some of the people who still wanted to go with the tradition broke away, and those that accepted the Romans culture also went their way. And the Arabs around that time also went away. They broke away from the kingdom, and so trade, businesses, and everything came to a standstill. And this gave the chance and the opportunity for the Romans, for the Persians to come in and feed on whatever the kingdom was producing, which eventually collapsed the kingdom. But mind you, eventually in the 13th century, this kingdom bounced back again and is doing great currently, still holding on to their history and their culture. It's amazing. It's amazing from this lesson. We've learned that black man, Africans, have always had a culture. We've always had our way of life, and it's so powerful, and it's so mighty, and it's so wonderful. So if in any day anybody tells you that we never ever had a way of life, history, culture until we came into contact with the Persian, it's never true. Rather, Europe, the Romans, never had a way of life. They never had a culture. They have to come to us to learn everything that they have right now. All their legacies are from us. So be proud of yourself as a black person. Be so proud of yourself. Be self-confident because blacks are capable of everything. I love you all. Stay safe. Stay tuned. This Ghana Unplugged. Always giving you the best. We coming next week with something crazy. Please don't forget to like this video on YouTube and subscribe. Love you all. Cheers. Salute you. Bye for now.